Fala pessoa forte, bem-vindo a mais esse episódio aqui do Papo Forte comigo, Rodrigo Polesso, especialista em ciência nutricional do exercício e também autor best-seller. E aqui eu compartilho com você, como você sabe, semanalmente, dicas exageradamente honestas sobre saúde, emagrecimento, mentalidade, exercício físico, nutrição, tudo baseado em ciência, tudo baseado em evidência. E olha só, de se viver uma vida simples, saudável, de baixo estresse, dando risada todos os dias, até andar dezenas de quilômetros na selva, caçando, enchendo a boca de mel, cozinhando babuínos no fogo aberto e festejando uma boa ceia. Hoje o papo vai ser interessante. Vai ser com um convidado especial que passou uns bons dias vivendo junto com uma das últimas tribos caçadoras e coletoras do mundo, que fica lá na África. O meu convidado é americano, logo esse episódio estará em inglês. No entanto, colocamos aqui legendas no vídeo para que você possa entender se você precisar e estiver vendo este episódio no YouTube. Então, sem mais delongas, vamos para o episódio de hoje. So, okay, welcome everyone. It's no secret that we are probably the most chronically ill species living on the planet right now. But it hasn't always been like that, right? It really seems that we are getting weaker with each generation. From the CDC own data, obesity prevalence in the United States is more than 42%. And I'm talking about obesity, not overweight, right? And that's a ridiculous number. Heart disease is the biggest killer, followed by cancer, and metabolic disease is widespread, all of which were very rare indeed not too long ago. And it was not a lack of diagnosis, like a lot of people say. But what changed? I argue that the root cause is not that we became the laziest species on the planet and can no longer control our mouth, but rather that they are side effects of all of these are side effects of major changes in our diet environment throughout the years. Humans are so smart that we learn how to be really dumb, in my opinion. So we create this toxic and stressful environment, thinking it's better for ourselves in many ways. And we detached ourselves from nature. And now we're paying a very steep price, I think. And today I have the pleasure to chat with the great Anthony Gustin here, who spent some quality time with one of the last hunter-gatherer tribes in the world, the Hadza in Africa. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on today, man.
It's a pleasure. I think it's going to be a nice chat. Anthony is a former sports medicine clinician, and today he's an entrepreneur and also the host of the Natural State podcast, where he shares research and insights into how to reclaim your health. And when was it again that you visited the Hadza?
It was a year ago today we were there.
Yes, it's pretty recent. And yeah, I'm happy that you've been there because apparently, I don't know for how long they're going to keep their...
Not much longer, man. I would be shocked if in 15 years they're still living the same way they are right now.
Yeah, that's really sad. It's one of the last places where you can go for some insight, right? So Anthony is going to share his experience today with us, but it seems that when we just allow humans just to be humans in our natural environment, we simply follow our instincts. We do what we like, whenever we like, and live a simple life without much ideology or complication. And I believe personally, most of the wrong things we do it because we were told by someone else that they were right, even before we even got the chance to think about it with our own mind. So let's dig in some aspects of the life of the Hadza, and hopefully we can also think about implementing some of those in our modern lives. I mean, who knows? So to begin with this informal chat here, Anthony, what did you observe when it comes to, vitality, health, energy, mood, just the way kind of they carry themselves, the energy of the tribe itself, the mood of the people and the vitality, or the first impressions, I would say.
Yeah, for sure, healthiest people that I've ever been around, but also the happiest. Mm-hmm. It seemed like the lowest amount of stress that I've ever seen in humans before. I think the misconception is that if we're close to doing the things that were required for survival, that means that we're actually struggling and barely alive. And that is just not the case at all. These people, again, happiest, least stressed people that I've ever seen in my life. That was the biggest thing that I noticed that was very far away from expectations.
Yeah, and yes. Yeah, I was talking to my wife the other day because we have two big problems. One is like food, right? The other one is security. So if you have those dialed in, you don't worry about paying 100 types of different bills or, your internet's not good or uploading a new video or 100 people shouting at you, in social media and stuff. So do you think this happiness is, we're going to talk about the diets and stuff, but do you think that the happiness and just the well-being can be just a consequence of the simple life they live?
Yeah, like you're talking about before, when we have security, I think a lot of reduction in stress and happiness comes from that. And the reason why, even with people with a lot of money now, like we're seeing what's happening with money over the last couple of years where things are getting crazy, inflation's going wild, and no, we can't even have the security that the money will buy us the things that we need to survive. And so basic things like community, depending on each other, shelters, food, just some very basic stuff. We are so far removed from the ability to be able to do those things on our own that I think that causes a baseline level of stress. Even if I took all of my friends that I have here in Austin and we went out into land, nobody would know how to build shelter for somebody else. Nobody would know how to make food. Nobody would know how to do any of these things. And I think that this abstraction of security to provide for one another is very challenging mentally. Like we don't know, it's a subconscious thing, but these Hadza people, for example, they would be able to go out and with a knife, they know exactly what plant does what. They know where to get the food. They know how to track in the animals, and like everything they would need is in their environment, and they know how to provide for themselves. I don't think any single person needs to do that, but now we're living behind computers where I do a little bit of thing here, and then it goes to some big company, and that then provides a good for you halfway across the world. Like we're so abstracted that I don't think we can actually count on security from other human beings. We have to count on these complex corporations working and having a million people working in a single thing so you can get iPhone. It's just like it's a fragile ecosystem. And I think going back to the root and actually being able to know like, oh, okay, I know I can survive and there's no fear. I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, that's interesting because even though we feel that we have more comfort, well, maybe more comfort or the illusion of more security, I think those people have a better sense of security. I mean, they know when the season is, right? Where the fruits are, where the trees are, where the lions are, whatever. But we don't know, right? We don't have the lions and stuff, but we don't know if something's going to break, like you said, if the economy is going to go down. If it's something that we don't have absolutely any control over, will screw our plans. So I think even though we think we're more secure and safe and whatever, I think that we don't have I don't know. Like you just mentioned, you never know what's going to happen to the banks, to the economy, to the business, to your, to the internet, to anything.
I think it's hard for people to think about that because we've lived only in a time of relative safety and security. But that could be like that's kind of an illusion. Like this, especially yesterday. So we're recording this on the 25th of February. Yesterday was the day that I don't know when you released this, but that Russia invaded Ukraine. And then there was all these news stories about like, oh, Russia could also take out, or like they would focus on taking out the American banking system or American electricity grid. And I was just thinking like, what the hell would happen if that was the case? Like what would people do after 5 days?
Yeah.
And that fragility, I think like people are starting to wake up. I mean, we saw COVID sort of shake the tree a little bit. We saw even in Texas, we had a freeze last year and power went out for most of the state for a couple of days. And just stocking up with putting some water and some non-perishable food in your basement that's not going to save you. You don't have the skills, you don't have the agency, you don't have the sovereignty to actually provide security for yourself. And when that's the case, I think that again, like people have this stress, they don't know where it comes from, but I think that a lot of it is just the awareness in tracking and the pattern matching, like, oh wait, like maybe there isn't a lot of security or as much security as I thought in society, and I don't know how to do anything for myself. So the world, we could be in World War III right now, things going crazy, and the Hadza wouldn't know any difference. Like nothing, it would not impact them at all.
Yeah, that's so true. I think the illusion of security for sure. Yeah. Okay. Another aspect I think that we are very detached from the Hadza is the social aspect, right? And even more so now, the last 2 years, I think, when they kind of try to push us away from each other, really. And so the social aspect, we're all interacting like we're interacting right now online. It's great, it's amazing, but interacting, it seems less and less in person. And I think, and you should talk a little bit about it, please. the social aspect of the Hadza, they seem to be people that are always connected to themselves. So we have the whole family there, the whole tribe, the tribe support, they party together, they hang out together. And I believe the social aspect has a lot to do with well-being. And we see that in the so-called blue zones, these people that they claim is only the diet, but I think it's a lot of factors, including social dynamics. So what do you think about that when,
Yeah, I think the blue zone stuff is so much more heavily weighted on diet than it should be. Yeah. There's so many other things like you talked about at the beginning of the show that the natural human environment contains way more than food. And the thing about community with the Hadza is that they're never alone, ever. Not like 1 minute in the day are they alone.
They even nap together, right? They even nap next to each other.
Yeah, they're like for example, if people are napping in the middle of the day, they're around a fire with 15 other people and they're just doing their own thing, but you're always around other people. And that happens so rarely now. Even if you have like a nuclear family where you're just around a couple people, it's clearly not the same. You live in your little boxes and there's so much separateness between you and other people all the time. Even when you're in your own house, it's like, okay, I'm in this room right now. And even if someone's in this home, like they're in their own room and it's like separated by walls. And then we're in our house separated by that. And like this, I think this overall is a good comparison to what we do with nature. Like we're separated in these houses from nature. We're separated from everything as individuals in our society, the Western society. Whereas Hadza, like, they're not separated from each other and they're not separated from nature at all. Like they sleep on the ground, literally. And they're part of the same thing. And that union with their environment, with their community, I think, again, like you take a squirrel from outside and put it in a cage, it's going to freak out. You take a squirrel from outside and put it in a cage with a bunch of other squirrels, not in its natural environment, it's going to be even more pissed. And the same thing happens for humans. Like, it's very clear all animals, if you put too many of them in the same small area, aggression goes up, stress goes up, anger goes up, violence goes up.
Yeah.
And, I mean, what do you think a city is? I mean, like,
exactly.
What an apartment building is. What do you think a mall is? It's all the same thing. It's just like, again, you're around all of these people, but you don't know any of them. You have no relationship with any of them. You don't have dependence on them. You don't provide for them. Yeah. And think about, like, they're used to it now from tourists coming out, but at least they know, like, when people see them, oh, this person's coming here to have this like interaction with us. But when you go out and you're just like walking around, your brain subconsciously is like friend or enemy, threat or not, all of the time. And I think that like there's so many other aspects of human life where we don't realize, like, our brains are programmed to assess those things. If the Hadza were running around and they have no concept of tourists and they came across other humans, alarm bells immediately, threat or not. And so I think we have that type of programming in us all the time.
Yeah, and we have been living in cities forever. And it's still, every time you cross someone on the street, there's some energy. There's some tension, I think. If you're actually paying attention, if you're not busy with your phone, you cross, do I look at this person? Do I don't look at this person? Right. In the elevator, do I look at it? But do I say hi? It's only natural to know that person in their environment. And if you don't, you should very quickly learn more about that person, right? In the tribe. So yeah, I wonder how the Hadza would behave if you drop them in New York City, for example. They'll probably be terrified and very stressed, because I don't know if these people are friends or enemies. So
right.
Yeah, man. Yeah, but I believe the social aspect is major, is something that we are really detaching ourselves a lot from our natural instincts when it comes to that. But I'd like to talk a little bit about the diet aspect of the Hadza, because they are hunter-gatherers and they live there in their own place for a long time. And the environment has changed, as we've seen. They used to hunt big game. Now they cannot find big game anymore with any frequency, so they need to go longer and explore the map and stuff. And yeah, so it's more difficult when it comes to that, but they only survive on the environment they have access to. And of course now, again, painful to know that they're eating the ugali and then they have people bringing things to them, but it's probably necessary because they no longer can count 100% on their own environment. So when it comes to diet, just an overall perspective, are they vegans there? Or
yeah, they only have big salads every meal.
Yeah, yes. How do humans eat in the wild like the Hadza do, like your perspective?
Yeah, so to be clear, I don't think that how the Hadza eat should be prescriptive for every human everywhere on Earth. So I think that's kind of like a big thing that people like to extrapolate. Just because it works for them where they're at doesn't mean it has to be the same for everybody everywhere else on Earth, because our natural environment changes. Like humans can thrive pretty much every single corner of the Earth.
True. And
the food that's bountiful there naturally is going to, like, humans have figured out how to eat these things. So I'm in no way like a zealot around humans should only eat how the Hadza should eat. I think Paul, I mean, I give him shit about this all the time. So he's a good friend, so I feel comfortable saying this, but like, I think he sometimes takes it a little too far with like, oh, Hadza eat this way, so everybody should eat this way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, what they ate and what they eat and what they prefer to eat, like you said, sometimes now they're dependent on some ugali. Ugali is like a cornmeal. So corn is still grown there locally. Yes, it's an artificial monocrop. We can get into why monocrops are bad, but overall, they get some of that from missionaries, and they need to eat some of that because they can't access the same animals. But if you ask about like if they didn't have that, what's their preference and what they eat otherwise, very clearly their prize thing is large game. And that makes sense for that area as well. Like, what do you think a safari is? You go out especially in Africa, and we went on some safaris, and it was obvious to note like, oh, this is what this ecosystem is like without human intervention. And it was large game after large game after large game. And that area has been like that for millions of years. And so the plants have actually been adapted to that. And most of the plants there look like they're going to kill you. Like, you run around and everything has these giant thorns on them, or like hook thorns. The plants are very clearly have been trying to develop defense mechanisms against animals for a very long period of time. Yeah. And so I think like that area specifically has been skewed to produce more toxic plants or more thorny plants or less edible plants. And so the preference for sure is animal products, and as big of animals they can get, as fat of animals they can get. So one of the things they told stories about of like their parents telling stories about like killing a rhino. Like a rhino is like such a prized thing because it's so fat and it has so much energy to it. And so they obviously like energy. You know, thrifty humans, they don't know when the next kill is going to be. They're okay with it though, because they know that they're hunting skills. But yeah, large game is for sure number one food. And then beyond that, we also, after we hunted a baboon, found this honey, this bee's nest with honey in it. And with the meat, with all the other fruit, with the tubers, even when they killed an animal, they cook it over the fire slowly. They hand a piece to everybody. Like, it's kind of like this very methodical, slow, intentional thing. Man, when they saw that honey, immediately it was just like, everybody eat it now. It was such an amazing thing to see. They just feasted immediately. I think the same thing is like such a dense energy source that they don't know when they're going to come across that again. But so honey is a huge thing. They love honey. And I think Paul has some references in some books where they've surveyed Hadza, and both men and women think meat is number one as far as preference, and then it's honey after that. Then besides that, I was only there during February, so I don't know exactly how things change in different seasons, but really not much else. Like a small amount of berries, that the berries are very poisonous. I almost died from eating them. And then they have roots, but they don't eat the roots. So for example, the roots are like very long sweet potatoes, and they trim off the skin and then chew on the flesh and then spit it out. They also boil them to make like soups and stuff like that. They boil them with the bones, and they do that. And then Baobab fruit. So baobab is this sort of dry, really sweet and sour fruit that probably has a lot of vitamin C in it. And that was pretty much all we saw them eat. They weren't eating any other plants than that. They weren't eating, like, we didn't see really many other fruits. So yeah, I'd say 90+% animal products. And then obviously as much honey as they could possibly get their hands on, what they would eat. And then beyond that, a little bit of chewing on tubers and roots, but not eating them. When I got sick from the berries, like, they had me chew on roots and spit them out. That's specific medicinal ones, but it wasn't an intentional source of nourishment or food, like food stuff from, which is just so weird because like there are all these reports of other studies that just claim like, yeah, the Hadza have this massive amount of fiber in their diet. They eat blah, blah, blah. And it's just, from what I experienced, couldn't be further from the truth. So I'm very skeptical of any even primary research of places now that I've been somewhere. And like, this is the exact opposite of what's quoted in the literature as their diet being this diverse thing of fiber. So,
right. Yeah, no, I agree 100% with that. It is difficult to find a lot of fiber in their environment, I guess. I mean, they wouldn't eat leaves, I think, right? Leaves have no nutritional value and they're probably poisonous anyways. Yeah, when we've been to the Kruger Park in South Africa once, you see this enormous amounts of big game. Like, there's no lack of big game. And so, but now the Hadza needs to walk like 20 miles in hopes of hunting a baboon, like a small baboon that they will probably, and people might be shocked with these things, but that's how detached we are from nature, right? So if you can tell a little bit more about the baboon hunt and how they process the baboon and how they fed people with the baboon. And
yeah, I mean, it was really sad, honestly, the fact that the guide we went with, his name is Gasper. He's an amazing human being. If anybody wants to do this trip, they can contact him. It's Gasper at Neeko Tours, Neeko. Cool. And just send him my name or Paul's name, and he'll set you guys up with a similar trip. But he said that when he started doing these tours about 10 years ago, they could go about 1 kilometer outside of camp, throw a spear or use bow and arrow and kill an enormous antelope or a zebra or anything like that, like a huge game.
Yeah.
And now 10 years later, this is how they have to hunt 20 miles, like 10 miles there, 10 miles back to get one baboon to feed everybody. And there are other small game, like they were able to hunt birds, and we got a genet cat one day, which is kind of like a cross between like a house cat and like a small little leopard thing.
Very lean, right? Very lean.
Yeah. Wasn't that big. So there's like random stuff like that. But overall, yeah, it's the fact that to see their land be diminished that much in 10 years is sad. Like they would prefer, again, the biggest, fattest game humanly possible. And they would dry the meat out and they would eat the whole thing and have a big feast. And yeah, now it's a huge labor to go out and get even a small baboon. And so it's a group of like 8 guys and had like maybe 5 dogs and had to hike out. And when we were hiking out, we were going through these pastoralists, which are usually herding tribes where they have like cattle or goats or something like that. They've essentially flanked their entire camp area. So Hadza used to live in this area called, it's around Lake Eyasi, and it used to be a huge area. And it's been over the years just smaller and smaller and smaller. And then now around that, we have these pastoralist tribes who have all these large animals and herds. And then also these big monocrops of onions, of corn, of other crops like that, all the way around them. So of course, and there's developments even around that. So what large game do you think is going to make it that way? It's not even that they've hunted it. It's that the development of humans being more industrial have pushed out all of the wild game. Just like I'm here in the city of Austin right now, if I drive out 40 minutes, there's abundance of deer. It's not the case because there's so much stuff around the city that none of the deer come close. So the same thing was happening to them. And then we go out there. Funny part also is that they love to smoke. They love to get high.
Yeah.
And so they also they trade with the local people who come in, and the guides know that they love to bring them weed. And even though it's like really weak stuff, one of their traditions, one of their rituals before hunting is like, we hiked out like 8.5 miles and then sat down and they lit this little fire. Like it's amazing. They can light a fire within 5 seconds, and then lit a little fire and then rolled a joint and got high. Paul did not partake. I ripped the joint with them, which was fun. And then it was crazy to be in that state. And then it was like climbing up this mountain. And then all of a sudden we hear the dogs go and then cracked into an immediate sprint. And then now the guys start splitting up, pointing. So what they're basically trying to do is they know this area where the baboons are up in the mountain in the trees. So you take the dogs in there and then split around and then try to basically flank where the baboons are running around. And these baboons are pretty dangerous. Like one of the dogs got completely gashed on its back when and like you could see its shoulder blade when it was walking around. And then the dogs go run up in the tree and then get the baboon and bring him down. And then the tribesmen come and stab him with a knife. It's a pretty intense, and Paul and I are like right there when we got this baboon. Like it was like a very, very intense moment, especially just having gotten high with these guys. but it was, it was extremely violent. But afterwards, it was like this sense of relief. And it's like very, very similar to how they live the rest of their life, where it's like very casual, very leisurely, and then a very short period of intensity, and then the intensity is over.
Yeah.
Whereas our lives are very much like engineered low grade stress all the time. And I think that people think like very much of, oh, it was like, it's like the lion chasing you or not, or never knowing. But like there's like, they don't have to worry about lions, but they like, it's intense when you're hunting. I don't know if you've been hunting before, but like even if you're hunting with a rifle and you're in a very controlled environment, if you're hunting deer, which don't really like come at you, it's very intense. It's like a very high adrenaline activity. And so they have the same level of stress and intensity, but in short bursts, and then it's over.
Yeah. And they love to hunt, right?
What's that?
And they love to hunt. Like
it's their favorite activity. That's what they dream about. It's what they love to do. The men obviously are like, that's their thing. They love doing it. And yeah, so got the baboon, and it was, I don't know, maybe 40 pounds. Like it was like a pretty small, it was like about the size of one of the dogs.
Right. That's to feed kind of the whole tribe a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way it's going to feed the whole tribe, but like they get that, they get some birds, they get whatever they can get, and they're always hunting. But yeah, the fact that they had to go out to do that, to get that 20 miles round trip. I mean, think about how much energy is expended that far. When they used to be able to go out a kilometer, throw a rock and kill an antelope, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I was about to ask about the honey. How often they come across any source of honey?
It depends per season, but I think it's pretty frequent. And they know a lot of times like where the honey is. And sometimes like this time they found a new place where they had honey. And so other ones like they know like, okay, hives being built here, so let's only take some of it so that the bees keep coming back. And then, they'll have, it's basically like their little honey farm because they know like when it's coming.
Right. And they only eat a spoonful because of the glucose spikes, right?
Yeah. No, they eat as much as they can possibly get.
Yeah.
It was, and it was like, it was the most delicious honey or anything sweet that I've ever had in my life. It was incredible.
Yeah. And it's available everywhere in the world, right? It's just a good source of energy, I think. If you're metabolically healthy, I don't think why you should be afraid of this.
Yeah. I mean, also though, it's like, again, very different in different places of the world. Like we have 11 hives at our farm here, and they only produce honey basically maybe in the spring and then always in the fall, typically. That's it. And so it's like this thing of, oh, like Hadza used to have honey, so I'm going to have a bunch of
2 jars a day. Yeah.
It's like, no. Like,
right. It's different, right?
Yeah. But if you're in that environment, you have access to honey all the time. Like maybe for you. And like the problem with extrapolating a lot of these learnings too to people is just like, I think there's some core fundamentals and lessons you can learn about this stuff, but specificity, I think it's tough to assign to an individual. Because we have, for example, like you're a Brazilian guy living in Mexico. I am like of German and French descent living in Texas, but like it could be like a Brazilian and French person lineage where now you're living in Alaska. It's like your genetics aren't matched to your environment. And so even if you went to a place, it's like there's no recreating the environment. The Hadza work that way because they have never left that environment. And the same thing typically with any of the places that are blue zones, you have the same genetics matched there historically because they're like usually islands, places like that you've had those same genetics in that same environment for so long. So you can count on like, okay, the honey's only in the fall and the spring. So but when it comes, we're going to eat a bunch of it, and the meat's this way, and we don't have access to fruit. And like, I think that you can depend on that. But like now that the world's so commercialized and your genetics are a big mismatch for most people in the world, that it's tough to like use these heuristics, even of like eating locally in Texas, like probably close enough to my Northern European descent, but not the same. And it would be different if I were in Costa Rica, like fruit in abundance there year round. So you just do the best you can do. But like, I think there's no arguing that every human, for example, would be worse off eating whatever weird shit comes in most of the grocery store right now. So it's like, okay, now that there's this band of real food, let's try to figure out what works best for you as an individual and figure that out. And I think that people can be fine on some plant food. I don't think it's as much of a poison as other people think, but that individual variability is going to be huge. But we can all agree that, not great to eat these weird packaged foods that have been highly processed. And the same thing, even with the community, it's like, the Hadza lived in the community a certain way. It doesn't mean that all humans need to live in that in a certain way, but like there's a fundamental truth there that like humans are communal species and they should live in more of a communal environment. Now, how you drill that down specific for like what works for what climate and what people and whatever, that may vary drastically. So like there's like the Hadza were mostly monogamous. There's been tribes that haven't been. Sure, whatever. You can cut it however you want, but ultimately it's like humans should be around other humans, and that's just kind of like we're tribal animals.
Yeah, so true. If you think about when we are the happiest is when we are partying or we are with the people around us. It's just natural. We feel energized. Some people introverted, some people extroverted, but I think everyone takes everyone has some benefit in interacting with other people. I mean, you cannot isolate yourself for sure. So all this tribes have this in common, right? And talking about macronutrients, like you're talking about, we have other tribes in the world where they have like the opposite. Instead of having not the opposite, but let's say the Maasai and the Tucacenta, whatever, and they have pretty much opposite macronutrients. But what they have in common is a few things, right? It's all this community, always real food as well, and their genetics, like you just talked about. And one another thing that we need to talk about that they don't have. They have in common that they don't have that, which is seed oils, right? Seed oils. In my personal opinion, I think seed oils is one of the biggest contributors to the collapse of human health in the modern world today. And I don't think they have access to that. Well, they have more access to that now, right? But what do you think about that? What do you think about the inclusion of seed oils into a mostly native kind of eating lifestyle? And we have a few examples of that, I think.
Yeah. So Paul and I are always in this quest of figuring out why people are so sick and fat. And we even saw in different parts of Africa when we were there, like the people even eating ugali, the cornmeal.
Yeah.
They seem totally fine. And I think that there's been this demonization of processed, even refined carbohydrates, refined sugars, refined grains. And while I don't think that humans necessarily do great on those compared to like a real food, this thing spoils diet, it's very clear to me that the oils are the worst part. And so like there's actually like, so outside of the Hadza, there was the Toga tribe, and there's also a Chaga tribe, but then you go closer into Arusha. None of those tribes had access to seed oils. All of them seemed like in perfect health. You go into the areas where they like have fried food stands on the streets, the street corners. Huge jugs of vegetable oils. Yes, there's some differences as well. Like they're probably getting like, but like the Toga tribe was basically eating only ugali and like in total fine health. Mm-hmm. So it's not like you can say like, oh, they have more nutrition and their life's way better. Like I'd say like they're getting less nutrition. These other people who have seed oils, you go into these towns and it's like you flip a switch and everybody goes from like being lean and healthy and like straight white teeth to overweight, very sickly looking. And this is like an hour drive. This is not like we're talking different parts of the continent here. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that seemed to be, as far as nutritional goes, like again, there's like more things at play here, but nutritionally, that seemed to be the only thing that had changed. And you don't see any society where we've introduced seed oils, these refined oils. And for people who don't know what these are, I mean, you've probably talked to them, but because they don't, we're taking small seeds and we're using a massive amount of refinement to be able to get the fat out of them and to eat the fat as some oil. And the reason why this is bad is because there's certain fatty acids. So just like protein has amino acids that people have probably heard of, fat has fatty acids, and there's a specific one, linoleic acid or other omega-6 fatty acids that just cause this massive harm in humans. So eating those in high amounts seems to trigger this metabolic response that basically destroys people's basically metabolic flexibility, as well as just cellular machinery that leads to, I think, the majority of chronic disease is the primary driver and the majority of obesity. I don't think these things are in isolation. I don't think seed oils are the only thing contributing to these factors. Human biology is very complex. And I think that we have, sunlight exposure, we have stress, we have hormonal issues, we have environmental toxins. We have a lot of these weird things that contribute to chronic disease. But then you're looking at what one thing is causing most of this stuff. Very clear to me, seed oil is number one.
Yeah. I never seen anything that correlates more than seed oils with chronic disease and obesity and all kinds of problems. And you can find them everywhere. Actually, if you even try to avoid them in modern society in the city, it's very difficult unless you prepare your own food. And you mentioned linoleic acid, but all the that one in particular, but all the PUFAs are really damaging. And there's so many theories when it comes to linoleic acid and seed oils. Once it makes you eat more, or I guess get less satiated, but also it certainly adds to oxidative stress on top of the stresses of modern life that people are already stressed anyways. We talk about hormesis, like, the hormesis. We are kind of living constantly in a hermetic environment, I think. I don't think we need to add more stress, but the seed oils probably tip that thing, makes that water in the bucket overflow a little bit. So there are many facades to that question, I think. And with the Hadza, I don't know if I remember correctly, but some people from the tribe end up eventually maybe migrating to the town or something like that. And it's the same genetics, and you see a clear difference in their health when they do that. I don't know if I think you talked about it before, no?
Yeah, there was a couple of women, one in particular that went to go live with the missionaries for 5 years in the town. And everyone else in the Hadza, the Toga, all eat the ugali, which is just cornmeal. She went in, started eating this more fry food, and balloon, like, she's obese now. Like her genetics can't handle it. I don't think many humans can. I think it's not like, for example, in Japan, a lot of people, instead of getting diabetes when they get metabolic issues, or instead of getting obese, they get diabetes. And so it seems like some genetics are sort of skewed towards how does the body respond to trying to prevent any sort of issue here. And some people store more fat. It's also eating more, but some people, I think, get metabolic dysfunction like Japanese do. And so, I mean, the same thing with this woman, like, where she goes away for 5 years and comes back and is completely obese when no one else is that went to the city. Like, okay, what are the changes here that we think led to this? And man, like, there aren't many more. I mean, she was still living in the communal life. She was still living like roughly outside. Like, what other changes are there?
Yeah, exactly. And it's insane. It's insane. You have so many examples of populations that really transform their bodies in the bad way when they started consuming these oils. And for people that don't know, these oils we call seed oils. They call vegetable oils because it sounds better. It sounds healthy, but it's a canola oil, safflower oil, corn oil, cottonseed oil. Let's say it's soy oil, corn. Yeah, all these oils that people mostly use. Actually, when we got to this Airbnb here, the only thing they left for us was like a big vegetable oil, a carton. So it's crazy. And you can find everywhere. If you go to any restaurant, you can bet your money that they're using vegetable oils for sure. And well, what kind of fats should we use instead then?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think that this depends on a lot of availability, but and preference and cooking methods. But yeah, I mean, any solid fat is typically going to be safe if it's not hydrogenated, if it's not a margarine, something like that. But animal fats, so butter, tallow, ghee, even coconut oil, palm oil from a health perspective is great, but there's a lot of environmental concerns about palm oil. Yeah. So if you look at RSPO, responsibly sourced palm oil, it's a good certification that you'll know that, like, it's not going to clear cut rainforests and killing orangutans, et cetera. And then on top of that, I think that olive oil and avocado oil can be problematic because even if they're up to 80% or more of these oils are actually adulterated with soybean oil or just soybean oil. And even when they're making these oils, they're pressing the seeds and the skin. And so they would technically be seed oils because we're pressing the seeds through and the pits of the avocado and the seeds of the olives. And so this linoleic acid that we talk about, it's like should be between 2 and 4% roughly of any sort of diet. And you see this in animals, you see this even in palm and coconut, same thing. In avocado and olive oil, it's anywhere from 10 to I've seen up to 40%.
Oh man.
In even olive oil, like extra virgin olive oil. So it depends on the olive, it depends on when you pick it depends on all this type of stuff. So when you're looking at the wanting to avoid the linoleic acid, I would say unless you know where it's coming from and have tested the olive or avocado oil, kind of best to avoid that. I mean, we're working now as a new company I have called 0 Acre Farms is working on, we're basically using fermentation to produce oil that, because I mean, the big thing around, as much as I would love everybody to be eating regenerative tallow, there's a reality that all restaurants depend on oil. Like we have a cultural obsession with oil specifically, like liquid fat, because we've run it for so long. So we love fried food, we love salad dressings, we love sauces, we love mayonnaise, etc. And so I don't see a future where anytime soon, even though I'd love for it to be the case where everybody's using tallow or like local regenerative source tallow. And so we have this obsession with it. So we're trying to create an alternative that has the same fatty acid structure that we should be getting using fermentation. Doing that. So hopefully people can have that as an option soon. But yeah, I mean, I think the number one choice should be solid at room temp fats. Like that's the best way to understand like, oh, this is probably gonna be something that's safe for me to consume as a human.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Another way of thinking about it is just eating fats that are easily available in the environment. Like, you never ever in your life be able to get any amount of any significant amount or close to what we're eating nowadays, or linoleic acid or any seed oils. If you're the Hadza, for example, right? There's no freaking way you're gonna be pressing soybeans. I mean, there's no way. There's no way. So and again, like I said at the beginning, we think we're so smart that we create all these dumb ideas. And now we're learning, or they're teaching us that all these natural fats are bad for us because of cholesterol, etc. So everything seems to be quite opposite to reality.
Yeah, and I think that there's even some caveats on top of that where lard and chicken fat. So lard is fat from pigs, chicken fat from chickens, obviously. And because these animals, even the pastured ones, are fed corn and soy.
Yeah.
Well, now those, just like when humans eat corn and soy, and just like when we make corn and soy oils, their fatty acids look much like that's for sure, man. The canola oil. Like I've seen pigs and chickens that are 30-40% linoleic acid, which is ridiculous. Like canola oil is only 20%. Like they are worse than canola oil, which is insane.
Yeah, that is crazy.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I no longer recommend lard unless you know the pig or chicken fat. It's just crazy. And that the good thing about that, just to add in this thing I mentioned here before, but the ruminants, right? Ruminants are magical beings, and they're able to, even if they feed them soy and feed them corn, they're able to kind of deactivate that and turn into more saturated fat. So their fat profile doesn't change significantly towards the omega-6s as the monogastric animals, right?
Yeah, they're using fermentation. I mean, that's what sort of spurred us making alternative fat, is that they use fermentation in their rumens, their guts, to be able to take the other fatty acids or sugars and break them down into 2 carbon chain saturated fatty acids and build them back up into saturated fats and monounsaturated fats. There's actually an enormous amount of monounsaturated fat, oleic acid in beef fat in tallow. So I think it's a species appropriate fat for sure. But
yeah.
Able to build them up from scratch, basically using fermentation.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool that you picked on that. And yeah, that's nice. I hope it works out and then can offer some better oils without the unpracticality of changing the texture. Never mind, it will improve your life 100%. It's still like a little bit too hard for the salad dressing, right? People nowadays are so spoiled and they have so many expectations, right?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's on their own journey at the end of the day, though. It's like,
yes,
I don't know where you started. I started eating like all this packaged food when I was younger, and it's taken me 20 years to end up where I'm at. And at the end of the day, man, it's like 95% of people are never going to get to where we're at, even having these conversations about food. Now, while I'd love to snap my fingers and have that be the case, if somebody goes out eating fast food and eating fries and fried chicken or whatever, like they're so far away from being like, oh, I should make my own food and buy animal fat and learn how to cook and be able to afford all of that. And so, I'm just trying to solve problems where like I don't think that there's a solution right now. And again, while I would love everybody to be eating this like sustainable animal fat and turn back the time, like we have a lot of work to do before we get there. And like there's a lot of people doing a lot of great education there. And I want it to continue, and I want to add to that as much as I can as well. But there's so many people who are just like so far away from having the exposure, knowledge, community, awareness about this stuff that it's challenging. Like how do you solve these problems? Like I don't have any better way than what I'm trying to do right now. So if you find a way that's better, then please let me know so I can help you out with that. But that's kind of where I'm at, trying to help people who have otherwise have no desire to even be curious about this stuff.
So true. It's even more difficult because all the main organizations are pushing the other side of the story. So you're fighting against main media, the whole industry, even the regulators, who are no longer regulators. They're just, another branch of the industry. So that's very sad. They're going to believe the podcast guy, or they're going to believe the American Heart Association, for example. That's a battle that is very difficult to fight, I think. But a lot of people are becoming ready for change. And when they become ready, they find something like what we're doing right now, and then they start poking around and changing their lives. But just to kind of wrap up here, I'd like to just talk a little bit about kind of the concept of happiness as a product of maybe a lower stress environment or lower stress life. So I'd like to know what kind of maybe insights or things you observed with the Hadza when it comes to just keeping a lower level of stress during the day that you could possibly see yourself implementing, in your modern life, and how we could do that possibly ourselves to improve our lives.
Yeah, I try to think about this question less of what you can add or what can you do, more
or stop doing.
Yeah, more of like how do you set up your environment so you don't have to make the decisions. For example, the Hadza, they just wake up and live, and they don't have to be like, okay, it's bedtime, so I need to shut my shades, get my red light glasses on, cool the house to 67 degrees, get in bed, have my routine, do that, get my sleep tracker on, take these sleep pills, and then I'll have a good night of sleep.
Right.
There's so many things that people are trying to overmanage. And it's great. Like, yes, like do better with that. But how can you set up your environment so that way these things happen automatically? And I think also it's just like the end goal of, like, I don't think the goal of being a human should necessarily be being happy. Like, I think that's a fleeting emotion like anything else. I just think it more of like, how can you have a more human experience? Because then you're going to feel less at odds with your environment and more, not even a comfort or at ease, but just secure and like have a normal human experience. I think we're so far away from understanding what a normal human experience is like and how we should have an experience as a species. And that's more, I think, what the goal should be, and understanding that struggle is embedded in that, and hard work is embedded in that. And a lot of times you do stuff that you shouldn't have to do. And I think that like people think that they'll be happy if they have less discomfort. And so again, I think like creating constraints around it where you're making less decisions, but putting discomfort in, putting community in, putting time and nature in, and having that be more of the framework of how each individual does it. Like I am trying to get away from giving like specific instructions to people, because so there are an infinite amount of ways and more of like heuristics and ways to think about it. And I think that's one that I would say, like, how do you put constraints into place so that way you have to make less decisions? And maybe it's as extreme as like you don't have lights, like you just tape over light switches. And so when the sun goes down, you're going to bed. Or working by candlelight or something like that. Again, not to recommend this, it's kind of insane to think about, but that's a very easy example to try to understand of like, okay, I'm gonna make this one decision where now sleeping is covered for me. Now I just go to bed when it's dark out. Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways you can do that. Like maybe only choose, like I'm only going to buy from local farms that are within 50 miles from me. So that way you're eating food that's seasonal. And you're knowing your farmers, you're integrated into that system. And so again, instead of going into a massive grocery store and say like, oh shit, what do I have to buy? What should I eat? What's my meal plan? Should I eat carbs or fat? No. I'm going to eat whatever's local and fresh in season all throughout the year. I'm only going to buy from farmers. Then it just, maybe you'll get turnips and beef roast every day for a week and a half. Like that's fall and that's what you get. Great. And so just pulls the decision-making out of it. It makes it way easy, and you just live towards what a natural human environment should be living like. So as much as people can do those type of things, I think better off. And that will lead, again, not as a goal of happiness as the end, but just like the goal to have a species appropriate experience.
Yeah, just a sense of well-being. And we don't want to be the Hadza like we talked at the beginning. I think we want to be the best we can be in our own environment right now. Have you done any specific kind of changes in your routine life after going to the Hadza? For example, going to the sun a little bit, or hugging a friend more, one more friend a day, or something. Anything specific that you personally have done after the experience?
Yeah, two main things would be cooking with fire more.
Right.
I've always loved it, but even more so now, like every single meal is like that. And it's just kind of an antidote to a lot of the things in modern society right now. Like you have to be outside, you have to be patient, you have to work with your hands. Every time is different.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually with friends, usually with people. Everyone gathers around a fire. Like every time now, like we have friends over or at an event, I'm using fire to cook. Every single time, the men always come over and circle around the fire, like almost immediately after it's lit. And
Man, that's
like different cities, different people. It's always a consistent thing where like I think we have this primal thing in us where it's like, okay, the men are handling the meat in the fire. And that's exactly what happened with Hadza, and it's still holding now. It's just hilarious. And so
I can just add to that, because coming from Brazil is a meat-based kind of culture. And even my state is the most meat-based state, Rio Grande do Sul in Brazil, where barbecue culture is like everywhere. And that's exactly what happens. You have a big party with like 5-6 families. What happens automatically is that men go to the barbecue, and that's fire. And then you have the sticks and the meat, very rustic, automatically. And the women go prepare something else, go interact with themselves. That's just how it is. And they are so happy. And that happens every weekend. If you say, let's do a barbecue, and people love it. And that's how it happens. Men like to play with fire, like to cook in the fire, like to feed other people as well. It's just so natural, right?
Yeah. So that's a big one. And I think like also doing challenging things with other groups of men.
Mm-hmm. Like sports or...
Yeah, so just like trying to figure out like what are things that we can do, whether it's like, hey, let's intentionally go on a really hard hiking trip, or go hunting together, or play sports, or even like, it may sound cheesy to some people, but like do inner work with other men. Like that's challenging to self-reflect and figure like, hey, how am I being a piece of shit? How can I be better as a human being? Like doing that with intentionally other men. Because again, this is something where I think that there's a certain masculine energy that comes out that like, when you're held to that, which may be controversial in 2022 to even talk about as a male, that I think it's important. I think it's, again, another thing you see consistently in all cultures is like men have their own rite of passage and women have their own rites of passage. And I'm not a woman, so I'm not interested in those things as much, obviously. So if you're a woman, like my fiance does like women's circle stuff, and like she has her own version of that, which is great and beautiful. And obviously for me to be able to engineer some of those things, especially when you're talking about like most of these things require being outside, being physical, having activity, like all these things where you decide like you start having to think less and less and less about like, how should I work out when it's, every Wednesday we're doing this hard thing outside in the sun. Like, am I getting sun exposure? Like, well, just plan things that are in the sun and like try to stack some of these things that are normal for humans to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. So I usually finish the podcast asking what you ate in your last meal. On your last meal. It can be probably now yesterday night, right? So regardless of what it was, you must tell the truth in this podcast. So if you can remember.
This was over 24 hours ago at this point. And it was 2 pounds. I didn't eat the whole thing, but it was 2 pounds of chorizo from this company called Force of Nature. It's amazing. They do a lot of regenerative stuff. So it was wild boar chorizo with, I think it was 6 eggs on top. And so you just cook up the chorizo, and then I cracked the eggs on top, and I threw it in the oven, and then I took it out and ate it. That was the last thing.
But you didn't eat 2 pounds of chorizo, did you?
I didn't eat the whole thing.
No.
But it was, that was the amount that was cooked together, but I ate probably 3/4 of that.
Yeah. And boar meat or pig meat, they're so freaking delicious. So it's really sad that they managed to screw that up. But yeah, you can still find, it's difficult, but like you found good boar, right? Where they eat the boar
appropriately. Wild boars that are hunted and killed and then used. So that was the last thing. I probably should eat again. I'm hungry. But yeah, that was a little over 24 hours ago. I did have matcha tea this morning. So I don't know if that counts, but I had just iced matcha tea.
Just that. You know, matcha tea for myself, if I drink it on an empty stomach, I feel nauseous like pretty much right away. Like 10 minutes later, I feel really nauseous. Something to think about. I even bought everything, like all the tools and stuff. I was so excited. And then I did it, and then I felt nauseous. Like, God damn it. And then I tried again the other day, and I felt nauseous again. Okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, listen to
it's a plant after all. I mean, it has different properties, impacts people in different ways, but...
Yeah, most of the carnivores probably think I'm an idiot now because I have tea, but whatever, I don't care. I enjoy it.
It works for you, right? That's the point. Less
Right.
ideology, more experimentation. And okay, so the very, very last thing now is what, let's say, what blatantly honest tip you could give the audience? Like if you could give one thing, one piece of knowledge, like blatantly obvious, without wokeism. You don't need to be afraid of hurting anyone's feelings, whatever. What do you think people should take home after this talk?
I mean, I think the easiest thing is no seed oils. I think it sounds very simple, but that's
true.
one thing that, like, if you start doing that, I think it's a cascading effect because you start having to be aware and like hold this idea in your head of, I need to check the ingredient list. I need to look what's in my food. And then you have the heuristic of like, oh, wait, this is ultra processed food. Like, what else is ultra processed in my food? And so like the one thing will lead to all of this sort of framing around how you look at food and start shifting people who have no idea. Like I've had so many people where like I've recommended so many different ways of thinking about nutrition over the last 15 years, people.
Yeah.
Eat real food, do paleo, do this, do carnivore. And then you get it down to the seed oil thing and people go, oh man, you told me that 8 months ago and now I've like completely changed the way I ate because of this one thing. And so that's what I'll go back to, seed oils.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I agree 100%. I think everyone can improve a lot just by removing that. And when I say by just removing that, yeah, it's a lifestyle change, man. If you want to remove seed oils, you're going to change a lot the way you eat, for sure. And yeah, I agree 100%. That was really nice talking to you, Anthony. I really appreciate your time. I hope you can, well, I don't know if you want to go to the Huds again. I think you mentioned you wanted to visit them again and stuff, but I hope you can live a life without much stress, and then you can keep connecting people to the natural human way of life, keep fighting ideology and praising more the science and just following more our instincts than the media. I think that's a good thing to do, and keep pushing forward with your projects. I'm very excited about the oil company that you're working on. That happens to have something in Brazil, which is very interesting that we were talking before the call. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. I really appreciate your time, and you're kicking ass. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you, man.
Thank you.